Ooh, welcome back to the Boneyard Podcast, everybody. This is your host, Jared Shaffett, along with my good friend,
Artemis Power.
We're coming to you this week with episode 215. 215, Artie. What an episode to have this week.
215.
This is a good one. This is a good one. Artie, I mean,
I don't know if it's necessarily
lots going on.
There's a lot to talk about.
No, there is a lot to talk about. We'll get into it. We're going to get into it. But Artie, first I want to know how are you feeling?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. We're halfway through the week. We don't usually do these things on a Wednesday. So we're doing it on a Wednesday night. Normally it's a Tuesday or a Thursday, however you do it. So Wednesday hump day is not usually the day we do these things, but I'm feeling good. Halfway through the week, looking forward to a fruitful college football weekend. And I'm just looking forward to talking ECU athletics with you. So I'm good, brother.
Yeah, me too. What a week it's been, though. I mean, the game against Army, and we're going to get into all of it. The game against Army last weekend was what we expected. And then, of course, the news coming out Sunday morning of Mike Houston being relieved of his duties as head coach of East Carolina football. We're going to get into that. And we're also going to talk about potential head coach candidates later on in the podcast. But first, Artie, I want to ask you, do you have a number 15?
Of course I have a number 15. Of course I do. And my number 15 this week, now this is chalk, but not for a professional reason, but just because he had such a phenomenal college career and he had so much hype around him. And he was honestly one of my personal favorite college football players of all time, not just for that generation or that genre, but of all time. And that's one Tim Tebow. I love me some Tim Tebow. That's my guy. Phenomenal. It is chalk. It's chalk. I don't care. I just don't care. I haven't said his name on this podcast probably ever. But that's my guy. That's my 15 for the week. Obviously, 2 national championships at Florida, Heisman Trophy winner, and just like the epitome of what you want as a leader. If I could pick a top 5 guys that I would literally, like not even figuratively, like literally run through a brick wall for, Tim Tebow's on that list of guys that I'd probably run through a brick wall for, just for how he can get his guys amped up, ready for any situation. If they're playing Louisiana Monroe, right, he's going to have his guys ready to play that game and want to put up 60. So Tim Tebow is definitely my 15 for the week. Phenomenal college career. Didn't pan out in the pros, but still had a glimpse, had a moment in the pros with Denver in that playoff victory against the Steelers. He had a moment, but yeah, that's my 15 for the week. Shout out Tim Tebow and a man of God. So
yeah. Is he looking for a job? I'm kidding.
I think he's still on SEC Network. I'm pretty sure he's still SEC Network. ESPN. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he still got his gig. Yeah.
I thought they canned him when they canned David Pollock.
I could be wrong. I think he's at least still with the SEC Network. He may not be full time on ESPN, but I do think he's still SEC Network.
He's going around the country doing his motivational speaking, which, hey, that team, can we talk about that real quick? That Florida team, like with him, wasn't Cam Newton on that team? You also had homeboy. Backup Cam Newton. And then, of course, you had Aaron Hernandez
was on that team. Yeah, you had
Urban Meyer coached that team.
Wasn't Percy Harvin on that team? I think Percy Harvin was on that team.
So.
That was just a ridiculous team they had.
And just the different personalities in that locker room.
Yeah.
Right? Like
quite literally. The difference of what was going to become. of that locker room. Yeah.
Just absolutely wild. That's a good one though. Number 15. When you started talking about college career, I knew instantly who you were talking about when you said number 15,
Yeah.
Tim Tebow. But all right, mine is it's chalk for me. It's a Carolina Hurricane legend, Tuomo Ruutu, played over 700 games in the NHL, winger for the Hurricanes, center for the Hurricanes. One of those guys that he's not going to be the flashiest guy in the stats, but he's gonna show up. And I don't know. I always liked watching Tuomo Ruutu, and it's a fun name to say. Now I think I can't remember if he's coaching or on staff with the Hurricanes or if he's on staff with the New Jersey Devils, but he is working in hockey still. So shout out Tuomo Ruutu. All right, Artie, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
ECU loses 45-28. I don't know what, Josh, you can probably keep me honest. I don't know what the final spread was on the game. I think it was 16.5 when I saw it right before the game, and ECU loses by 17. I'm getting a thumbs up from Josh. So, I mean, yeah, Vegas had it right on the money. And if you took ECU to cover like we did last week already, you lost that bet. Sorry.
Yeah.
But all in all, ECU started slow. I mean, in all honesty, probably played Army tougher than anybody's played them all year. I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but that's what my guys at Brigade Review, the James who we had on the podcast last week, was telling me. He said ECU really like put it to us, and still it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, and ECU's defense did a lot of good, but they still just couldn't slow down that high-powered. It's crazy to say high-powered and Army offense in the same sentence, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean they seem to just score 40 a clip at will against anybody. I mean 7-0 is insane at this point in the season. And yes, like you said, it was a predictable game. It was a game that, unfortunately, that's kind of how we thought it was going to play out. I will give ECU credit in the sense that they didn't give up there in that second half, right? I mean, you scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. They definitely showed some fight. They showed some fight. They showed some will.
And
there in the second half, a little too late, obviously. And Army was able to extend the lead in the second half, obviously. Otherwise, it really could have got interesting if we really wanted it to be. And that's the most points we've scored on offense all season. I'm not counting the Norfolk State game. I don't care about that. I'm not counting points against an FCS. That 28-point total against Army is the most we scored on offense. So, I mean, we did some good things offensively in that game. But you said defense played well in spurts. I honestly think the defense, to me, was like that's the alarming point that I'll take away from the game, because honestly, 3 of the last 4 games we've allowed over 35 points.
Look,
3
Army has the 12th ranked offense when it comes to yards per game or points per game in the country.
Yeah, not taking anything away from Army. I'm just talking about overall how our defense has played over the course of the last 4 to 5 weeks. It's been bad. It's been 35 points a clip outside of UTSA. So
yeah,
and
UTSA really is a whole other thing. No, right. it is concerning, but ECU stood their ground and made Army do things that they haven't had to do all year on offense. Right. And that this is coming straight from our guys at Brigade Review. Like, I'll be honest. I stopped watching at halftime. I was getting ready for a concert. I was like, this game's over. Sue me. I was trying to get drunk. But
good reason. And Morgan Wallen in the Charlotte. Good reason.
Oh, I had a blast. Also went to this bar afterwards called Belfast Mill.
Heard of it? Haven't been, but heard of it.
It's like a little hole in the wall. It's about the size of my office here. This guy, first thing he did, came up to me and he was like, "Hey, let's take Irish car bombs." And I was like, "Okay, buddy, we're gonna have one of those nights then."
Yeah, no, he was messing with a pirate.
Yeah, we had a good time that night. But anyways, look, Army's offense is different. Navy's offense is different. Looking ahead, ECU still has North Texas and Navy on the schedule, both of which are in the top 10 in points per game on the season.
North Texas is 5-1, right? Aren't they? Like, I think they only have one loss on the season.
Yeah, North Texas
They're good.
is
They're good.
doing the damn thing.
It's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at them, they've got almost 4,000 yards of offense on the season. So, and I think they're doing it quite a bit through the air. They're the number 2 passing offense in the country. So that'll be fun in a couple weeks. But anyways, ECU loses to Army, and everybody's like, "Okay, we lost. We looked bad. We got 5 more weeks of this. Can we get to bowl eligible?"
Mm-hmm.
We go to bed. I think most people, if you're like me, went to bed Saturday, and yeah, you were pissed off Saturday afternoon, but come Saturday night, you're like, okay, whatever. Like, I've given up. Wake up, and around 8 a.m. on Sunday morning, you get a notification that athletic director John Gilbert has relieved Mike Houston of his duties as head coach.
Yeah.
Artie, give me your first thoughts or give me your first reaction once you saw that come out.
There's no shock in that. Now, I will say I didn't. Although I wasn't shocked, I didn't think it was going to happen at this point in the season. I do believe that he was going to get the remainder of the season to coach out. Honestly, I thought he was going to get that, especially after the Charlotte. I mean, you have the Charlotte loss. You see how everybody's responding after that, right? You keep him after the Charlotte. I figured after the Charlotte, it doesn't get much worse than that kind of a loss. So I figured after that, he's probably going to have the rest of the season, and whether it's good, bad, in between. We'll make a decision at the end of the season, but it happened the way it happened. I'm not shocked. Obviously, when you look at the 21 season, when you look at the 22 season, and as a fan base, as boosters, as administration, as Gilbert, you're looking at like, okay, we're getting into the right situation, and this is something that's going to progress into what we brought in Mike Houston to do, and it did not materialize into that. Obviously, last year with the 2-10 season. Couldn't get anything right with the quarterback position. And then this season starting off 3-4 and obviously going back and forth at the quarterback position, which is like, okay, it speaks to what the hell were you doing in the offseason to where now you have to push your quarterback game 4 or 5, whatever it was. It was a mess. It speaks to maybe not the culture, the buy-in in that locker room. Maybe it was never there. Mike Houston, from a human standpoint, great guy. Mike Houston from a recruiter standpoint, great recruiter. There's no question that he could get quality athletes in that building. But developing those guys, getting the max potential effort out of those guys week in and week out, establishing a culture which should have been set 3 years ago in Greenville, don't know if it ever really got established. And that speaks to why he was out after 7 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll be the first to admit, on this podcast last week, I said there's no chance in hell that Mike Houston is fired. I didn't think that ECU could afford it. After that podcast came out, it wasn't long after we started getting a little bit of information that, look, ECU and John Gilbert has said that this money's coming from the athletic department and athletic fund. Mm-hmm. Yes. But from my understanding, there was a major donation that was announced, but there wasn't as much money in that donation. Just going to put that out there. I think there's more money in that donation than what was actually announced. And that is helping cover the buyout for Mike Houston. And with that, Artie, with that, the thing is okay, now it almost feels refreshing. ECU in the past has fumbled this so many times. Mm-hmm. And I've long been a believer of, if you're, and ECU didn't do this last year, but if you're certain that you're going to fire somebody, you don't let them coach another game. Like, if you know John Gilbert, as soon as he realized,
Mike Houston's not the guy, that Saturday night, you're like, yeah, no, he's not the guy. Then
Sunday morning you have a job to do, and your job is to fire Mike Houston. And I'm a firm believer in that, because you don't want to let anything go any longer. Plus, we've all seen what's been going on online, on the message boards, on social media. Everybody's saying, hey, we're not paying any more money until Mike Houston is gone. Granted, I don't know how many of those people were actually doing what they were saying they were going to do, but I think it was a threat enough to force the athletic department's hand to go ahead and make this decision. And what it does is hopefully leads to an influx of money, not only into Pirate Club, but into Team Boneyard, right? To make sure that once this new head coach is hired, he's got all the weapons in his war chest to go after these recruits and replace a bunch of guys, because you're going to start to see a mass exodus. Look, ECU football athletes, they have 30 days to enter the transfer portal. And Josh, you've got all the deets on here, so feel free to jump in if I say something wrong. But basically, they can enter the transfer portal. If they do that, they lose any NIL contract or whatever that they had, but they will maintain their scholarship through the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yes. So the scholarship is an athletic scholarship that is guaranteed for the coursework of the semester. Any other supplemental funds that may come from Pirate Club that could be under a separate section of a contract, things like that. So that could be something that has changed since I was aware of the system. With NIL, though, it is a private contract, not with the university, but with Team Boneyard, to execute certain things, on behalf of Team Boneyard as an ECU athlete. But once you hit that transfer portal, you are no longer considered an ECU athlete.
Right.
So the coaches could still let you play. That would be because you're still bound to the university for the scholarship, but that's still your personal choice to actually take your physical body to the game. So yeah. They have 30 days from the date of the fire. So,
and I think I want to say this, because I think the timing, and I don't know this for sure, the timing of it is interesting, because the guys that are going to play this year, what it does is they've played in enough games already that I'm talking like a Yannick Smith. He's played in over 4 games now. He can't redshirt this year. So it's at least keeping a lot of those guys most likely willing to play throughout the rest of the season.
And I will say that it's somewhat strategic, because if you think about, if you fire him after Charlotte, you have a week off at Ranked Army, and then you have homecoming. A lot of those younger cats on the team are probably go ahead and get out of there in that 30-day window. You get through the bye week, you get through a loss to a ranked team, but you make the fire, Now you have homecoming. And now you have rallying behind the seniors.
Yep.
And you have the 3 winnable games directly ahead of you. And then after homecoming, you have a bye. So you're just bonding with the team. You're just sticking together. I think the move was made at the best time it could possibly have been made.
I think I agree, Josh. I think this was a very strategic move by John Gilbert. And like I said earlier, I think that once you know you're going to fire him, you fire him. I think that they let him coach against Army. See, can he somehow, some way pull off the unthinkable and upset Army and get that signature win that we've always talked about Mike Houston missing?
Mhm.
Not that I necessarily think beating Army is a signature win. I would put beating BYU at BYU a couple years ago over that win, but
Yes, absolutely.
I think that it was. I think there was a lot of strategy, and okay, let's fire him. The fan base should come back strong next week at homecoming. Got an opponent that's coming in that isn't beating the brakes off of anybody by any means. And really, you've got a 3-game stretch here where ECU can really do some damage.
I want to hop in real quick and just talk about the BYU game. I had actually written down this note because I think that this is a very, very pivotal part of Mike Houston's career at ECU. October 28th, 2022, Mike Houston wins his 100th career win as a head coach against BYU, makes ECU Bowl eligible for the 2nd straight year. You can't tell me that there's not a better feeling on that day. In the 2 years since, ECU has gone 6-16. There was not a period outside of the first 32 games of, or yeah, 32 or 22, sorry, 22 games of Scotty Montgomery's career at ECU that was a worse tenure in the past almost 20 years, excluding John Thompson, because we don't count that. There was not a worse period of ECU football in terms of record on the field since then.
Yeah.
It was bad.
But it's one of those things. Josh pointed out so greatly. It's like that win at BYU in that moment to get us bowl eligible. We ended up finishing 8-5 that season, and that was the season where we really could have won 10 games. That was easily a 10-win football team, easily. And the fact that it didn't, like, that was the crescendo. Like that was the peak, and it just avalanched after that. Yeah, no, that's wild.
And there's a saying, right? Like, you don't go into Provo and beat BYU. Teams don't do that. And ECU did that. Like, it's tough.
BYU, you look at the program, they still got the same coach. They still got the same coaching staff. You look at them right now. That's a team that could crash the playoff this year.
Yeah.
So
that's a very good, historic program. And ECU went in there and won. But all that to say, Mike Houston never got it done. I want to echo what Artie said earlier. Mike Houston, great guy, decent, like really good. I'll put him in the really good category of recruiter for what he was dealing with here at ECU and who you're up against when you recruit at ECU. I don't necessarily love his recruiting strategy of basically trying to find all the guys in New Jersey and New York and like the Tidewater region.
Not focusing as in North Carolina in the South as maybe he should have. Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. As competitive as you still got to go out there and try.
Overall, though, we wish Mike Houston the best. That's done. And I feel rejuvenated. Artie, I feel like ECU is doing it differently than they've done it in the past. And for whatever reason, that gives me hope for the future. I know somebody at one point told me or said that I was the most pessimistic person about ECU football. Have you seen Steve, the pissed off pirate, on Twitter, or Denny O'Brien on Twitter? Like those guys.
Denny O'Brien's not a real Pirate fan, but
like, come on now. I speak my mind, and I'm probably one of the more optimistic people when it comes to ECU. I'm excited for what's to come. I think ECU has the opportunity by firing Mike Houston when they did to finally make that home run hire and bring in one of the next top coaches in college football. I firmly believe that. And I know people say, oh, John Gilbert's hiring record isn't great. I mean, outside of basketball, which it's really tough to hire a coach to come in at ECU and win. Outside of that, like it's not terrible.
I mean, to save the basketball program. So
and Mike Schwartz had the best year last year that ECU's had since joining the American. Don't forget that. But anyways, Artie, Blake Harrell is the interim head coach.
Yeah.
Friend of the podcast, Blake Harrell. I texted Blake Sunday when it came out, and the thing that I got was, hey, we just want to finish this season strong with our boys, and that was just the epitome of what Blake is, right? Like he is a players coach. I firmly believe that he loves East Carolina University, and I firmly believe that he loves every single one of those guys on his team. And it couldn't have happened to a better person for him to get this opportunity to be the interim head coach at ECU. Granted, I don't see him being named head coach full time unless something miraculous happens, but I don't see it. I also don't know if it's necessarily the job that he wants. In knowing Coach Harrell, and this isn't him telling me something. This is just the vibe I get. It seems like this being a head coach isn't where he wants to be. So Artie, real quick, let's go through some of the top names on the board currently to be the next head coach at East Carolina University.
Let's do it.
Real quick, let's start at the top. So Blake Harrell, already kind of said my piece on him. I won't say even number one. One of the top candidates in a lot of people's opinion, Joe Sloan, LSU offensive coordinator. Of course, his time at ECU, former ECU quarterback and holder, won the Conference USA championship with ECU in 2008. Offensive coach since 2010, 2011. Started out at USF. He's spent the last 12 years in the state of Louisiana with Louisiana Tech and LSU in various positions. Had the number 4 recruiting class as an offensive coordinator at Louisiana Tech in 2020. Last year, of course, QB coach at LSU, Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. And then this year was promoted to the offensive coordinator position at LSU. Still a really good offense. Your thoughts on Joe Sloan before we move on to
look, Joe's an ECU guy, right? Obviously, and he's someone local. He's someone that feels like it could be a get, right, as far as bringing it into this ECU program. Obviously, the one that sticks out to me is that he was the quarterback's coach for Jaden Daniels during the Heisman Trophy campaign, which means he knows how to coach quarterbacks. He knows how to coach an offense. LSU's offense is pretty good this season, by the way, as well. He's been in Louisiana. He knows how to recruit. Now, obviously, we've had good recruiters in the past, so you want somebody who can actually develop, not just recruit, but develop and actually sustain. But no, Joe Sloan is definitely he's one of 2 names and we'll probably mention. Well, I know we'll mention other, but that are at the top of my list.
Yeah. All right. Next, we're going to talk about Bryant Vincent. He's one that's kind of under the radar. The thing that stands out to me is he doesn't have. Well, a lot of these guys don't have a bunch of head coaching experience. He's one that does have a little bit, but in my opinion, not enough. He's kind of bounced around quite a bit over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, as many coaches do. He's the head coach at UL Monroe. This is his first year there, second year there. Had the 19th best red zone offense, I guess. Yeah, last year at New Mexico, and the 19th best rush offense. He was the interim head coach at UAB in 2022. Helped lead the Blazers to 2 straight Conference USA championship appearances. But he's 12-7 all time as a head coach. The numbers aren't fantastic, but you got to look at where he's been. The next one that kind of stands out to a lot of people is a guy by the name of Garrett Riley, former ECU wide receiver coach. Of course, everybody knows his brother, Lincoln Riley. He coached on ECU staff under Ruffin McNeil when his brother was the offensive coordinator. He was the wide receiver coach at ECU, coaching guys like Justin Hardy and Zay Jones. The thing that stands out to me, Artie, he's been the former, or he's been an OC at 3 current Power 5 programs, SMU, TCU, and now at Clemson, who has the number 2 offense in the ACC and number 7 nationally. That could be a get. He's familiar with ECU. He's young enough. I think I think he's in probably I would put him in my top 3 or 4 candidates right now, along with Joe Sloan.
Yeah, no, honestly, I think Joe Sloan, Garrett Riley, that might be 1A, 1B. The only thing is he's hot commodity, right? His name is being brought up with a whole bunch of other schools and names outside of East Carolina. And although he did, have a tenure at ECU, was an assistant there, obviously familiar with the program, he might be looking at greener pastures. I do believe that East Carolina is a hot commodity, really attractive offer, really attractive job. The only thing with Garrett Riley is his eyes might be bigger than Greenville, North Carolina. But I do feel like that is a great get if we can get him. But who knows?
I will say no Garrett Riley. He doesn't deal with the transfer portal because he's at Clemson. So we need somebody who's in the portal now and knows how to really use it.
Right.
Fair.
That is true.
Fair.
That is true. That's fair. That's fair.
All right, the next guy, and this is one of those under the radar guys that I honestly might put in my top 4. Josh Gaddis, offensive coordinator at Maryland. He's from Durham, so he's a local guy. Played safety at Wake Forest. He's been the offensive coordinator at Michigan, Miami, and he's now currently the offensive coordinator at Maryland. Mm-hmm. He's also been on staff with James Franklin and, some guy by the name of Nick Saban at Alabama. Ton of experience in the Power 5. What was that?
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Yeah. I saw he was doing some commercial with a duck and Deion Sanders. I don't know. Ton of experience in P5. A really good recruiter nationally. Also won the Broyles Award back in 2021, which is the award for the top coordinator in the country. And this would be his first head coach job. He's got, I believe, 15 years of experience or so as a coach. He's been an offensive coordinator all over the map, tons of P5 programs. He's done it all on the offensive side of the ball. He knows defense as well, playing safety in his playing career. Had 5 interceptions at Wake Forest, by the way. This is a guy that I think could be an under-the-radar pick for ECU.
I absolutely agree. Another name I would throw out there, Western Kentucky, Tyson Helton. I would throw him out there as well as a potential candidate for the ECU job. Much like the guy you just mentioned, just success wherever he's been, and really at this point, it's about getting someone who can actually come in and build a program, right? Develop guys and actually be able to maximize skill, potential, effort. Like that's really what we're looking for because whoever we hire, they have such a tremendous task ahead of them, right? Because this is going to be the most important get, especially with the landscape of college football as it is now. They have to be able to come in and not only revive the program, but to be able to move us into the next wave of realignment, of being significant, of staying relevant and not falling to irrelevance. It's an attractive job, but it is a tremendous task. Whoever we get, because they have to be able to take this program to heights that we probably have not seen before, just to stay relevant.
Yeah, and I've got two more on the list. I'm really only going to talk about the next one. Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator at Miami. Here's my thing on him. Yes, he is at the helm of the number one offense in the country right now in total offense yards per game and passing yards. And then his team ranks second nationally in points per game. You also have the front run or one of the front runners for the Heisman Trophy as your quarterback. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling Cam Ward. It's gonna be Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Ashton Genty in New York. Those are my three picks right now.
The way he's going right now, yeah, they should be there.
With that, Artie, he's been all over the map. Outside of what he's doing this year at Miami, not a ton of success. He's been at West Virginia, Southern Miss, Houston, and Kentucky. So he's got some SEC experience. He's familiar with the conference, being a former offensive coordinator at Houston. So that may be helpful. He's a Texas guy. I like him, but I don't have him in the same bracket as I have like the Garrett Rileys, Joe Sloans, and Josh Gattises of the world right now. And then lastly, this one I just kind of threw in there. It's kind of an interesting one. Bill Clark, former head coach at UAB, 60-30 all time as a head coach. Here's my thing on Bill Clark, and really I've seen names thrown around like a Tony Gibson from NC State. I don't want a defensive-minded head coach. Not right now. Mike Houston was a defensive-minded head coach, and we could never get it done on offense. So I don't want that in our next coach. I want somebody that knows offense and has done it on offense at the top level. And so that's why guys like Garrett Riley, like Joe Sloan, Shannon Dawson, and Josh Gattis stand out to me. Bill Clark has the record as a head coach. He's been a head coach at UAB and Jacksonville State. He retired early due to health problems. He had issues with his back. Turns out he's healthy enough. He says he wants to get back into coaching. That could be an option. But Trent Dilfer might be on the way out or should be on the way out at UAB.
Yeah, he should be out.
And honestly, he should have probably been the first coach fired, not Mike Houston. And Bill Clark could be eyeing going back to his old stomping grounds.
Right.
We'll continue as the season goes on to add more names to the list and keeping track of these guys.
It's a fluid situation right now.
But these are just kind of like the initial 6 or 7 names that we've put together. There's so many names out there. GJ Shin is another name that we've seen tossed around. That would be an outstanding get. Another thing I don't want to do is I don't want to hire. I don't want to pull up from the FCS again right now. I want to pull up somebody that has P5 experience at a coordinator position and has led offenses in the P5.
Right. In a big boy conference.
Right.
They've had to coach big boys. They've had to coach guys that compete at this level. Yes.
But
yes.
All right. anything else you want to talk about? I know we've had our guests waiting in the wings for a minute, but
now let's bring him in. Now make him wait no longer.
all right, now joining us from the I'll Be Back podcast, Sean McGrady. Sean, welcome to the Boneyard Podcast. How we doing, my friend?
Good. No, dude, I was kind of enjoying just, I wasn't complaining being in the waiting room. It was kind of funny just as a Temple football fan and watching somebody else go through the motions of a coaching change. Because I think Temple, ECU, and a bunch of teams in our conference, you have to make the right hire for a coach. Like, we all know none of our coaches are staying for 3, 5, 7 years, but you get them for 2 years. You have 2 or 3 good years, and you just have to make the right hire. So it's just fun kind of seeing another team in same position. I mean, back in the day, we had Matt Rule, and it was awesome. And now look at where he's ended up in, NFL and the Big Ten. And hearing you guys just talk about what your guys' next coaching hire has to be, it just made me feel good as a fan of a Temple fan. Like, hey, I've had this same conversation with Temple fans. Everything you guys just said, I've had that conversation. So I was just kind of in appreciative mode of everything you guys just said.
Yeah, I was honestly very surprised. Mike Houston was the first head coach fired this season.
I did not see it coming, and honestly,
nobody did.
We are playing you guys this week. Temple has not had the best season. I know you guys have not had the best season. So going into any week for us to be like, hey, I think we have a chance of winning, finding out that the team we're playing just fired their coach on Monday, I'm like, I think we have a good shot, right? Like, we have a shot. I'm not saying we're going to win, but it's not good news for you guys if you're firing your coach on Monday, right?
Yeah, you always worry about that. There's a lot of there's several veteran leaders on this team that I don't think they'll let it slip. They have a bunch of pride, a lot of pride in the program and in their work. But the players, they're not very happy with the decision to fire Mike Houston. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. But I guess talking about coaches, I'm honestly surprised Rod Carey still has a job.
Rod's gone. Rod's at Indiana now. Rod's at Indiana. We have Stan Drayton as our coach. He's his third year.
Why was I thinking Rod Carey was still there?
Thank God he's not. Rod, if you want to talk about a coach that lost the locker room, like Rod, he somehow at Indiana. In Indiana, I know they're having a good season. He's their offensive coordinator. So we hired Stan. So just because, like I said, listen to your guys' conversation. So Stan Drayton's our head coach. It's his third year. He was actually a running backs coach. He never was an offensive coordinator. So he never had a coordinator job, but he was at Ohio State, Florida, Texas. So he has that big time pedigree. His claim to fame was he was at one point Ezekiel Elliott's running back coach, and one of the good running backs at Texas, whose name is I'm forgetting. But so he has that big time pedigree, but he never was a coordinator. So it's his third year, but we've struggled. I mean, his first year he definitely came off the Rod Carey era, which if you want to talk about a coach who lost his team, Rod Carey lost the team. I mean, I remember his final season. I made a tweet about Rod Carey sucking, and one of the players liked it, and I think that's when I knew that Rod Carey was not here to stay. I was like, all right, this is not a good sign. And then I did like the hire Stan. He's just had first year he was taking over a team that was dismantled from the transfer portal era. His second year last year, injuries just destroyed our offensive and defensive line. I mean, by the end of the season last year, our O-line, we were playing freshmen who shouldn't have been playing. Our claim to fame was we had E.J. Warner as our quarterback, which if anybody hears that last name, Warner, it is Kurt Warner's son. Yep. He transferred to Rice. So we were like, what the heck? Our only bright spot just transferred after last season. So this year there were some question marks on offense. I think we did a good job in the transfer portal, kind of upping the offensive and defensive line. And then we never really figured out the quarterback situation. So the first couple games we played a guy named Forrest Brock. Forrest had his ups and downs. He won the job in spring ball. And he just didn't, in game time, it just didn't happen. And unfortunately, he got hurt. He hurt his wrist. And they brought in a guy named Evan Simon who transferred from Rutgers. So he had the big time, Big Ten playing experience. Evan Simon has looked really good. Since he's come in, He's looked much better. The offense has looked much better. Problem is, he also got hurt, so we had to go back to Forrest Brock. So we're 2-5 at this moment, which going into the season, I would have thought we were maybe 3-4 at this moment. But we also statistically had one of the hardest schedules going into this point of the season. No one would have thought that because right now Army's ranked top 25, Navy is ranked top 25, which and if you include Oklahoma in that, 3 of our first 6 games were ranked top 25. Did not think that in August, that we'd be playing teams that were that good, but Army and Navy are really good. And low key, we suck against the run, and that's all those teams do. Watching us defend the triple option was a nightmare. So I don't know if ECU has that in their game plan. Highly recommend it. I would email the coach right now, run the triple option tomorrow. Learn it, do whatever you can.
I need to get JDB on speed dial and be like, yo, I got the game plan, coach.
But then we played UConn 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago it was, who was top 10 in rushing offense. And we actually played really well against them because they didn't run the triple option. So our defense has kind of come into their own. They figured it out. Last week we played Tulsa, and I think in the first half we held them to under 100 yards total on offense. Now the second half I think they had 160 yards or something. So they kind of figured it out. But our defense looks better. Our offense looks better with Evan Simon at quarterback. So we're 2-5, but I'm not kidding. I think the actual Temple newspaper, their headline this week was maybe Temple's not that bad. We're not great, but we're just not as bad as you might have thought a week ago.
Yeah, and the Drew's talking. I believe that was 2014. I think that was the first time and ECU fans will know this. That was the first game that ECU wore the white helmets, I believe. Which everybody thinks that at ECU that the white helmets are a curse. But yeah, I feel like I want to take a step back, talking about EJ Warner a little bit. 2 years ago, y'all almost got us. Y'all didn't have the best season, but EJ Warner absolutely performed out of his mind, and that was an absolute shootout in the link.
Yeah, that was kind of the game where I think we were just kind of holy crap, what do we have in this 5'10" random kid who just was living off of his last name? And then I think everyone's oh, maybe he's actually really good. So that was definitely a holy shit moment for us Temple fans. Where'd this guy come? And then I'm going back 2 years ago. So at the time that he was the guy that came in out of nowhere, we had a guy named DeJuan Mathis who was at one point Ohio State, and our other quarterback was Quincy Patterson, who at one point was Virginia Tech. So we had power conference quarterbacks on our roster. So for him to get the job and come into games and throw for hundreds of yards, that's why last season was all right, if we have a good defense, have a good line, we could be good because we finally got a quarterback. Lines all got hurt. Quarterback transfers this year. So Temple, I say it all the time, Temple's going to Temple. We always find a way to do Temple things, and I'm sure you guys know that as ECU fans. How the hell does this keep happening to us? It's the same thing.
How the hell do we keep losing to Tulsa?
Yeah. So that's why, it's so at 2-5, it's part of me is yeah, I kind of expected this. And then last week, if you saw the game that we had, we were up 17-0 at half and we won 20-10. Was it the best win ever? No, but they showed signs. Same thing against UConn. We were 17-point underdogs against UConn. We lost on the final play of the game. The final play of the game was we had the ball on the 1 yard line. All we had to do was QB sneak it. We fumbled the ball, of course. But that was a very winnable game. So we could easily be 3-4 right now. We could probably also be 0-7. So it's it is what it is.
Sean,
I'm looking at the stat.
Go ahead, Jared. Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to put the stats out there I'm looking back at the ECU Temple game from 2022. ECU beats Temple 49-46.
Yeah, it was a shootout. I think we had 500 yards of offense.
Holden Ahlers had 314 yards passing. Keaton Mitchell had 222 yards rushing. Keaton Mitchell also led in receiving with 2 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. Keaton Mitchell had 4 touchdowns on the day. EJ Warner, 45 of 63 for 527 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception.
He really did that?
And I think we might have had. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't even think we had like 10 rushes all game. Like I don't think we had like any rushing yards.
Sadie had 14 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. But then,
literally,
you had a guy with 13 receptions and 160 yards.
Who was that with the receptions?
Jose Barbone.
Barbone, yeah. He transferred to. No, did he transfer? No, I'm thinking of Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue was on that team too. I don't know what he did that game.
I remember that name.
Yeah, but Barbone was good.
And then ECU won or scored the go-ahead touchdown with about 2 minutes left on the clock to go up 49-46 and was able to close it out. But just an absolute barn burner of a game. And I remember my family, it was Thanksgiving weekend, and my family we were wanting to go to like a Christmas parade, and I was so pissed off at the Christmas parade because I was like, how the hell are we losing to, or how the hell are we going to lose to Temple right now? No shot at Temple. Like, I mean, y'all went 3-9 that year, but
no offense taken.
We shouldn't be losing right now. I was like, this game sucks. But anyways, Artie, what was going to be your question?
No, I was just gonna. I mean, honestly, speaking on like some of the glory days, though, like you mentioned Matt Rule earlier, right? Like you guys have been on the cusp. You guys have been there. You guys have been ranked recently. Not this wasn't 1,000 years ago that you guys were really good. So, what do you think it would take for Temple to kind of get back? I mean, you're in Philadelphia, right? Like this is like a passionate city, big city. They love their sports. This is not a city that doesn't care about their sports. They're very passionate about their sports. So, what do you think it would take for like Temple to try to get back to that kind of winning way?
Honestly, and I think I kind of started with this, like, it's just like, we need to hire the right coach. Like, it always comes down to like finding the right coach for a couple of years. And we've had a couple that have obviously not had quite Matt Rule's success here, but we've had guys who've kept it up enough. And part of the problem was Rod Carey just didn't. And there's a 2.5 week time period in Temple football history that nobody will ever talk about, but I will, because I have a stupid podcast about this team. So we actually hired Manny Diaz to be our coach after, who was it? Jeff Collins.
Yeah.
And I swear, if Manny Diaz stays at Temple, he's not going to be there for 5 years. He's probably there for 2.5 years, 3 years, and he goes back to Miami. I think he would have been successful. He goes back to Miami in 12 days or 14 days. I didn't know this at the time. I found out. Like, I know a guy who is a Miami fan. He's like, dude, I think we're firing our coach and we're hiring Manny Diaz. I'm like, that makes no sense. He just signed a contract with Temple. So all of these things happened. Turns out Manny Diaz's dad at one point was the mayor of Miami. So, like, it made so much sense for him to go back. And we panicked. We did a huge panic. Like, we've always done kind of like splashier hires. Like, we got Steve Adazio, who was like Tim Tebow's offensive coordinator at one point. We had this guy, Jeff Collins, who was the most gimmicky guy in the history of football. He's not great, but he was gimmicky. And that's, a school like us will take it for 3 years. If he does a hashtag that's actually trending in college football, whatever. He was the first coach to ever put like players' Twitter handles on the back of their jerseys. Like ESPN did a story about it. Cool. That's what we need at Temple. We need dumb shit like that gets us noticed and if it gets you recruits, cool. Then we panicked and we got this Midwest guy, Rod Carey, who is consistently 8-4 at Northern Illinois. Like consistently 6 years in a row, it was like 8-4 at Northern Illinois. And we're like, all right, let's just get this guy. He did good his first year. And then he just never knew how to recruit the Northeast. Like he just didn't, he was this Midwest guy who had no idea what he was doing. So like Stan Drayton's first year, who's our coach now, like was awful because he had his team, his roster was essentially the equivalency of like a JUCO team. It was just bad. So I think Stan still can succeed. I think he was given a hard hand. And this year, 6-6 would have been great. I think he's going to get one more year no matter what happens this year. But after that, so I don't know if you guys follow Syracuse football, but Syracuse has a coach by the name of Fran Brown. Fran Brown was at Temple, was notorious as a phenomenal recruiter, born and raised just outside of Philadelphia. If Stan Drayton didn't get the job, it probably would have been Fran Brown. And Temple fans remind me that almost every week. Like, that could have been our coach. If that was our coach, maybe we are on the trajectory that Syracuse currently is. And the life of a Temple fan, all these what ifs. Like, I just mentioned 9 what ifs in that last rant, and that's it. It's like, what if we did this? What if we did that? And we never do it. We never, that's why we are where we are. We're not part of, like, I don't know if you guys are in the same boat. It's how do we get out of the American? I like the American, but like, everybody wants to make the next step. How do you get the ACC, or do you get the Big 12 call? And I could date back to before Matt Rule as a coach. How could Temple have gotten one of those phone calls for the never-ending conference realignment? Like, that's the goal. How do you get to the next conference that gets you more money, gets you the better recruits? And Temple, it's always what if this happened, then that would have happened. And that's the story of my podcast, guys. So please listen. If anybody out there, please listen to my podcast. It's great. This is sarcasm, by the way. It's not that great. I hate it.
I saw the in the comments, and I don't think it's possible to do in Philadelphia, and with just the land size of Temple University, having it on campus stadium may help a little bit, but it's probably impossible. Right?
I would sign the check tomorrow if they let me, but when Matt Rule was here, there was talks about it. There was 100% talks. But you need a winning team. Like right now, like tomorrow, nobody's going to fund a team that's 2-5 for an on-campus stadium. I 100% agree with you, Drew, who wrote that in the chat, the comments. Yeah, you're right. Stadium would love to have it in 2014, 15, 16. It was on the table. Yeah, part of that is also Temple. They've messed up a lot of other things that don't involve athletics recently. So they're like, football stadium is like 27th on their to-do list right now, unfortunately. But it helps with the argument if the team's actually winning. That's also, yeah.
Is Temple just the ECU of the North with slightly better, or honestly at this point, I'll say at this point, slightly better education?
As a Temple grad, I appreciate my degree. I don't know if I'm smarter than everybody, but but yeah, it's probably, and honestly, and I don't know how it is down there because I'm sure you guys compete with the Dukes, the North Carolinas of the world, and all that jazz. Like you mentioned, Philly's a huge sports place. Like we compete with the Eagles. We compete with, and I hate to say this out loud, but like Penn State, most people are Penn State fans around here. Not many people think like Temple football on a Saturday. They think Penn State. Like I always say, we're like the evil stepbrother of Penn State in this area. It sucks, but that's what we are. So like that Matt Rule era, that was cool. Like everybody actually cared about Temple football for the first time in 75 years.
And I know it's on the other side of the state, but you're probably also, I mean, Pittsburgh's been coming up over the last 4 or 5 years.
Pitt's good. I mean, people tell me all the time, like we're a basketball school, which even our basketball team hasn't had the best last 4 or 5 years. So it's like, what are we? Like, I think our women's basketball team is pretty good right now. Maybe we're a women's basketball school.
Same.
But yeah, it's just been, we just have so much to compete with between the Eagles. Like I hopped on tonight a little later than I originally said I would because I'm a Sixers fan. The Sixers played tonight. So we compete with a lot of sports.
Right. It's hard to get lost in that kind of a city, especially when you do not have a consistent winner, right? Like a city like Philadelphia, New York, you like up there in those big Northeast cities. Like if you're not consistent in winning, you're gonna get lost.
And yes, I'm just checking the chat. Baseball, yes, Phillies are huge here too. I was trying not to bring it up because we lost to the Mets in the playoffs, but yes,
Go
baseball
Braves.
as well. But I think by like just to kind of bring it back all circle is we need to win. Like winning cures it all. Same thing for basketball, same thing for football. Like winning cures it all. In the Matt Rule era, people cared about the team. You have to find the right coach to take over for the next guy and keep it going. If we can go 8-4, 9-3, because around here there's a lot of good schools that you can recruit from locally. there's a lot of resources you can use, but you just have to keep it going and keep it going and keep it going. So 1 or 2 bad years really, like, it's not like where our NIL is going to take us to the next step every year. So you really just have to luck out with a couple 2 or 3 stars that you didn't expect to succeed to take the next step randomly each year. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I don't want to keep you too long. I wanted to ask on Temple, we talked about their schedule, like coming into the season. Yeah, you play Oklahoma to start the season, but nobody thought that the schedule was going to be as tough as it was. You played 2 of the top 10 teams in total offense on the year, in your first 5-6 games. You have wins over Utah State, win over Tulsa. You're 2-5. But what is something that ECU fans should look out for this Saturday? Like what is Tulsa going to do to ECU, or try to do to ECU this Saturday?
I think, like I said, when the quarterback switched to Evan Simon, he's really done a better job with the offense. He spreads the ball around. I think the one game against Utah State had 300 or 400 yards. Last week he had close to 300 yards. So he can, if you just have to defend the pass. For whatever reason, we still can't run the ball very efficiently. I think we average maybe 100 yards on the ground. Defend the pass on offense. They're trying to find a good running back. They have one running back, Therese Worthy, who's kind of stood out a lot. Evan Simon is good for maybe 2 or 3 scrambles out of nowhere. He's athletic. I don't want to say he's a scrambling QB, but he's athletic enough that there's 1 or 2 you think it should have been a sack, and he breaks it for like an 8-10 yard run, but it's enough to keep a drive going. I think our defense, it's so weird to say. Like I said, we played Navy, we played Army. Those options crushed us. And obviously the first week of the year, Oklahoma, there was no chance. I think the spread was 44.5 or something. Like going into it, it was like, don't lose by 40. We lost 51-3. But our defense is actually playing really well. Like our defense has a couple of players I could see either being 6th, 7th round draft picks or undrafted free agents in the pros. We have 2 linebackers who each really have an eye for the ball, DJ Woodbury and Taekwon King. And then we have a safety, Andreas Keaton. They're all, I don't want to say playmakers. Like they're not going to get like 3 interceptions returned for a touchdown or something like that. But like they're changers of the game in the sense of they will make the stop on a run where, instead of a 5-yard gain, it's a 2-yard gain. Like they make their tackles when they need to make a tackle. And I think our defensive line has done better. I think in our first couple weeks really struggled, whether it was because of those offenses we were playing or whatever, but the D-line's done a better job against the run as well. Like I said, UConn, I think, was ranked 10th or 11th in the country against the run, or for running the ball. I think they averaged over 200 yards a game. We held them to 99 yards rushing. So they're slowly figuring it out as a unit defensively. Even like Coastal Carolina, who we lost to coming into the game, I think they averaged 40 some points and we held them to 28. We still lost. It was 28-20, but like that's better than the Army game, Navy game, Oklahoma game. So they're figuring it out. It's just the defense, I think going into this year hadn't caused a turnover in almost like 10 games. And now they've forced a turnover in like 3 straight games. So just little stats like that show that they are still, and I'm not going to steal their words, but a different podcast, Al Scoop said this, like Stan Drayton hasn't lost this locker room. Like they said it, they're like, he hasn't lost the locker room like the way Rod Carey did. The guys are still playing hard, and that says a lot about this team, even though they are 2-5. So it's just, you're playing a 2-5 team, might not be the best talent wise, but they're still trying. They're still playing out there. And I feel bad saying this on a show that just literally fired their coach. So I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, guys. But I think this team is still playing hard for him. So offensively, if you can kind of figure out a way to make us, like, if you can stop our run and get us to 3rd and longs, it's going to be tough. But the offense has played much better the last couple of weeks, and so is the defense. So I think it's going to be a good game. Like I'm very excited for the game. going into it Monday morning, I would have said I think you guys are the favorites, and then Monday morning at 9:30, I found out you guys fired your coach. So now I think it's a toss-up. I really don't know.
For sure. Yeah. I think the line opened at ECU minus 7.5, even after the Mike Houston news, which was absolutely astonishing. But yeah, I feel like it's going to be an interesting game this weekend.
So for the sake of, I just don't know. Like, how did this happen? Like, I'm sorry. Like, what was the reason for the firing?
Mike Houston did what coaches and schools like NC State and Carolina do all the time. And at ECU, you've got to outperform when you don't have the same resources that other schools have, right? So you've got to do more with less. And Mike Houston did less with more than really any ECU coach has ever done. Fan base gave up. That's right, Drew. The fan base turned on Mike Houston over the last 2 years, and money talks. And Drew's exactly right in the chat.
I like money. Drew. I don't know Drew, but I like Drew.
Money talks, right? And we said this earlier. A lot of people. Now I don't know the exact numbers behind it, but a lot of people were very vocal online that they were pulling money from ECU, from NIL, from Pirate Club, from season tickets, all this because of Mike Houston's performance. Last year, he mismanaged the quarterback situation. This year, it seems like ECU wants to run this high-tempo offense, but they brought in, 2 new receivers, 3 new receivers, 2 new quarterbacks. Your offensive line is a hodgepodge of a couple of guys that have transferred in from P5, but also mostly guys that were FCS guys that transferred up. So your offense is not very good. You're down your like elusive, like speedy back. He's been gone most of the season. You're not able to really run the ball as much, but then you're also turning the ball over at an alarming rate. And Mike Houston has done nothing to change that. And it's a new offensive coordinator, yes, but at some point you've got to say, okay, we can have explosive plays, but we don't have to snap the ball every 15 seconds because what happens with ECU is they snap the ball, they throw an incompletion, they run it for 2 yards, and then they throw another incompletion. Now you're punting 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and your defense is never getting off the field. You should look at our time of possession. It's absolutely insane. Mike Houston never made an adjustment. Mike Houston never made adjustments at halftime. He never really had a solid game plan for anything. And the team was best at practice. So all of that being said, it was time. And it probably should have happened after last year, but you didn't do it at the right time. So it was time. And ECU made the decision to let him go. And I think it was the right decision. I don't think that he should be the head coach next year. So I think once you know that you're going to fire him, you let him go.
So they just ripped the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, I mean, get out in front of it. Be the first team to be on the market looking for a new coach. And then also, I mean, bring your donors back in. This weekend's homecoming. It's going to be a good opportunity to get the fan base into Dowdy, get them loud, have something. I said it feels like a lot of ECU fans have some optimism around what's going on. Maybe not around like the performance on the field, but where ECU can go from here. So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. But ECU needs a home run higher. They just have to have one. They've swung and missed on the last 2, and I'm worried that you swing and miss on the next one, you're going to be struck out and you're going to be stuck at the bottom of that American Athletic Conference for the rest of eternity. So that's how I feel. But Sean, I appreciate you joining the Boneyard podcast. Real quick, are you coming to Greenville this weekend? Any chance?
So sadly, I'm not. It's actually on my to-do list. A couple years ago, I went to Duke when we played at Duke. I did go to UConn a couple weeks ago. I've been to Navy, so I do try to make like at least one away game. So I think somebody just asked me this last weekend, and I was like, I'm not going this year, but definitely that's something I want to go, because I think it'd be a fun trip. It's probably drivable for me, and it'd be fun to go down there. But
yeah, I believe it's just a 6-7 hour drive down. So
yeah,
come on down. We'll have you at a tailgate.
I assume both of you guys will be there.
We will.
What is the tailgate scene like there? Just because again, I'm not too familiar. Good turnout, or
We may not win on the field, but we win at the tailgate.
That's all you can ask for.
So, but cool, Sean. Go ahead. I don't know if you did. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find your content, and we wish you the best of luck, man.
No, thank you guys for having me. This was awesome. Like I said, it was really fun just kind of hearing your guys' perspective, talking about your next coaching hire, and just kind of talking. I'm sure Temple football fans and ECU football fans, we kind of go through the same motions every season. So it was just kind of it was good hearing another fan base kind of. We're all in the same boat. We're trying to do the same things and get the ship right. But yeah, so I'm Sean McGady. I'm on Twitter at @OwlBeBack, owl_be_back. I do shows like this, my own show each week, previewing games. So I did start an Instagram for it the same way, because the young kids, they don't do Twitter anymore. So I tried to cater to them, but I don't know if it's working or not, but I'm trying.
For sure.
It's all TikTok. All TikTok.
TikTok, Instagram.
I'm putting my foot on TikTok. I'm refusing to do TikTok. I'm 33. Like, I feel too old doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not that much older than Artie and I, but we're there. We're there. We don't do enough on there, but we're there. But awesome, Sean. Best of luck after Saturday. We wish
best of luck to you guys, man. I'm sure I'll message you guys during the game. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Appreciate you.
That was Sean McGady from I'll Be Back podcast. Artie, how you feeling, man? You want to get to walk the plank? Do you have one?
Yeah, I'll throw a random walk the plank out there, just because I was able to sit back and watch college football this past weekend, the late night games, mid-afternoon games, and obviously that call in the Texas Georgia game was absolutely monstrosity. Like, now, was it the right call? Yes. Like, did they eventually get to the right call? Yes, they did. And for those that don't know, there was a pass interference call that was called against Texas that was clearly not a defensive pass interference. It was a clean interception. It should have never been called a pass interference. It should have been, stood up on the field, clean interception. It took it back to, like, I don't know, 15, 20-yard line, whatever it was. Should have been called. But the ensuing chaos that happened after that call and the precedent that it set after that call is why I'm making this the walk the plank. Because basically Texas and their fan base, and really it was the student section, they threw a hissy fit. They threw a whole bunch of bottles on the field. And during that time, Steve Sarkisian, he goes over, he tries to get the fan base to calm down, puts the hands up, hey, chill out. I saw all this live, by the way. This is me just watching this live on television, seeing all of this just unravel in front of my eyes. And basically that gives the officials time to huddle up. They look at the scoreboard. They see the replay being replayed 1,000 times. They see the 1,000 bottles on the field. Mind you, this is not a reviewable play. I don't care how egregious it was. I don't care how wrong of a call it was. You cannot review it. It was called. It's over. It's Georgia football. There is no review. But they come back and they overturn the call, and it sets one of those precedents to where, I can throw a hissy fit and I'll get my way. And that is such a horrible thing that I do not want to see. Now, was it the right call? Yes. Because it was not a pass interference, and it should have been Texas football. But it's how we got there that is the walk to play.
And on that real quick note, the SEC did tell Texas, basically what the SEC wants Texas to do is to identify people that were throwing bottles and
there was 1,000 bottles on the field.
And they want them to use the cameras in the stadium to find out who was throwing bottles. And then ban them ban them from the stadium. Like, get
Nothing's
the fuck
gonna
out of
come.
here.
Yeah, nothing's going to come of that. That's not holding anybody accountable because the accountability goes with the refs. You made a terrible call, but you have to live with that because it's not reviewable. So at the end of the day, and Kirby Smart had every right that he really should have gone into the refs. He was very respectable and classy after the games, but yeah, no, that was bad. That was bad.
For sure. Mine. Look, UCF used to be the darlings of college football. And Gus Malzahn's seat is absolutely on fire right now. Josh, I just sent you a tweet. I don't know if you've seen this. So a defensive end at UCF, his name's Kaven Call. He was the first recruit to commit in that 2022 class. He committed to UCF on Christmas Day or around Christmas in 2021. Seems like he was like the kind of leader of the recruiting class, kind of like really proud of being from Orlando, being one of those guys. Apparently, he informed the coaching staff that he was that he was going to redshirt and then transfer. And so when he did that, the Gus Malzahn and the his chief of staff basically told him that they weren't going to allow him to redshirt, which he can't do. Like he can decide I'm going to redshirt. That's completely up to him. And then what's going to happen is they say if you do this, we're going to tell every team because they're going to talk. We talk to other coaches when they call about you. We're going to tell them that you quit on your team, that you're not leaving on good terms. He didn't want to like clean out his locker. He wanted to still be part of the team. He was just going to redshirt and then enter the transfer portal at the end of the year. Now he's written this letter to Coach Gus Malzahn, posted it on social media, and said, "I'm setting the truth straight so that way any coach that wants to talk to me, when they talk to y'all, they know what's going on. Because you're going to tell them this, and it's not the truth." I don't know. Gus Malzahn just seems like I don't know. He seems like he's lost, and he's lost the fan base. I don't know why. I'm all over UCF Twitter, or I'm all. That's all I see on social media is UCF posts outside of ECU, and yeah, it seems like everybody wants him gone. That's my first walk the plank. I feel like I had a second one. It's James Franklin today. So basically, and it's not even really what he did. So there's two Penn State athletes. I don't have their names in front of me that are facing pretty serious allegations and are, I believe, have been arrested on felonies for let's just say, and here's a trigger warning, sexual assault and worse allegations at Penn State. And the SID or the communications director at Penn State said, "Look, James Franklin's not going to answer any questions about these guys. Like, he's just not going to." I get it.
You can't.
Most likely he can't. But as somebody in the media, as the media goes, they have the right to ask about any updates, whether they're still on the team, whatever that's going on. So the first question was about one of the athletes or about those athletes. James Franklin, all he has to do is say no comment, or I'm not going to comment on it. James Franklin he walks up to the microphone, and before he even gets to the microphone, the question's asked, he just walks off. Doesn't say anything, just walks off. And I'm like, all right, you've got to answer that. You don't have to answer that question, but you have to say, okay, no comment on that. I'm here to talk about Penn State football. I don't know. Just
But maybe he knew it was going to be a firestorm of questions that did not surround football.
But if you just say no comment and you keep saying no comment, at least do that. I don't know. The way he just walked, he didn't even stop at the microphone. They got half the question out and he just kept on walking. Didn't look at the reporters. Nothing. Just walked on by. And didn't even acknowledge them or the question. And I get it, but when you have athletes that when you have a serious allegation like that on your football team, especially with the history of Penn State, look, you gotta at least like keep it professional.
I agree that he at the very least should have been like, no comment. We're not going to speak on that stuff. It's an ongoing investigation, right? This is an ongoing investigation. I am not going to speak on that matter. Please ask me football related questions. Yes, he should have absolutely done that. But to the reporters, ask it because they know better, right? You know he can't answer these questions, but you ask it anyway. That's asking for that kind of response. You're asking for that kind of response.
But that's the same thing to say, like anybody that says, oh, and Igo won't have to be told to ask Mike Houston the hard questions anymore. But when they're tweeting
no, that's completely different.
But still, like sometimes you've got to ask the hard questions, and sometimes that's part of it. And,
the hard questions, sports related. Now, if it's a legitimate allegation,
you have been the head coach at Penn State for a decade now. After everything that's gone on and things that have gotten pushed under the rug at Penn State, you've got to at least acknowledge the question. And Penn State is a top 10 program in the country. They are, nationally recognized for being a historic program, right? This is big and it's important. It's similar to Kirby Smart having to answer questions about his athletes driving 130 miles per hour.
Right.
It's got to be done. So, all right. Gambling corner. Josh, I know you got to go. Feel free to put yours in the chat if you want. Otherwise, we can handle it. All right. Artie, gambling corner. Let's go through this, and then we'll get out of here. We've been going for far too long at this point. First up, UT San Antonio at Tulsa. Tulsa's plus 7.5. Over under is 54.5. Artie, what say you?
I'm not even going to hold you. I don't know shit about either one of these teams outside of when we played UTSA for that 1 week. I feel like this is a battle of the suck. I'm going to take the under 54.5. I'm going to take the under. And who is favored in this game? Is it Tulsa?
UTSA.
UTSA favorite.
7.5 points.
I don't even know Tulsa's record. This is how much and I should know because they're in their conference. But I don't give a shit about Tulsa. I ain't been paying attention to Tulsa.
They lost to Temple last week, 20-10. If that tells you anything.
Yeah, I was leaning UTSA anyway. Yeah, I'm probably going to take UTSA. I will say Tulsa will cover.
Tulsa's 2-5. 2-5 with a win over Louisiana Tech in Northwestern State.
I didn't know it was that bad. Good God. Okay.
And their one FBS win was a 23-20 win over Louisiana Tech.
No. UTSA is bad enough. They're going to entertain Tulsa. This is going to be a battle of the suck. So I'm taking Tulsa to cover. UTSA wins outright and give me the under.
All right. So Tulsa to cover. And then the under. Sorry, I'm trying to do Josh's job. Tulsa to cover. UTSA outright.
UTSA outright.
And then the under.
Yep.
I'm also going to take the under. I'm going to take UTSA outright, and I do think that UTSA covers. that spread.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next up, BYU at UCF. Number 11 BYU goes on the road to the bounce house. The Knights are 1.5 point favorites against the top 15 team in the country, and UCF is absolute dog shit on the year. And I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't say that, but they are. They're not very good. Artie, what say you? The over under is 55.5. Don't remember if I said that.
Did you say UCF was a favorite in this game?
Yeah, that's what the notes say.
No, that's got to be wrong. I feel like that might be. I feel like that has to be a typo.
I'm checking it now. Over
There's
under 50.
absolutely no way 3-4 UCF is even at home over an undefeated BYU. Absolutely no way.
No, it's real. It's real. I'm looking at it right here on FanDuel. Yeah. UCF's a 1.5 point favorite against BYU. This is a lock. This is an absolute lock.
Yeah, no.
The
Vegas
fan base, the fan base has given up on UCF. I'm taking BYU to cover. I'm taking BYU to win outright, of course. This over under 55.5. I don't know enough about UCF's offense. I'm gonna take the over.
They do.
So
okay. I feel like UCF started 3-0 and they've lost 4 straight games. Right? It's just literally falling off. If you talk to me about UCF after week 3, maybe this is like, okay, yeah, this is going to be a good game. But 3-4 UCF, it's falling off a cliff. Their defense is dog shit. And I don't care what their offense can do. This is undefeated BYU. This is a pretty good team. Even if they finish, 9-3, 10-2. I mean, this is a good BYU team. No, Vegas is absolutely wrong on this. I'm taking BYU outright. Obviously, BYU to cover. And I'm gonna take the over because I think there's gonna be a lot of points scored. But this should be a lot to look. If UCF wins this game, it's because BYU made hella mistakes.
Here's the thing. UCF went on the road at Iowa State last week and played them close. Honestly, probably could have won that game. Lost 38-35 at.
They're competitive. And I get
Iowa
that,
State, but I mean, they lost 19-13 against Cincinnati, 24-13 against Florida, lost 48-21 to Colorado. Like
the break speed off them to Colorado,
and then they beat a middle of the pack TCU team, 35-34. That's their best win. And then I mean they beat Sam Houston State 45-14, and then an FCS opponent 57-3. Like they are not good. Like blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, and they came close to get at Iowa State, but there's no chance in hell that UCF covers or even wins this football game.
BYU would have to be unfocused for UCF to keep it close. For UCF to even keep it close, BYU had to be unfocused. Not gonna happen.
So you got BYU outright, BYU against the spread, and then your over under.
I can see this being like what Army did to ECU last week. Like it's like a 45-28 ball game. Like UCF scores some points. Yeah. They're gonna score, but it's not gonna be that close.
So over?
Yeah, I'm taking over.
Okay. Well, that I don't have Josh's picks right in front of me. I guess I could open this up and look at them to see if we have a lock of the week. Let's see here. Josh. has picked BYU. We got a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. BYU at UCF is the lock of the week. BYU against the spread, BYU outright, and the over. All right, Artie, next up, LSU at Texas A&M, number 8 at number 14. A&M is a 2.5-point favorite. Over-under is 53.5. This is in College Station.
Allen Field under the lights. I feel like the last time LSU played Texas A&M under the lights in Allen Field, that was that 74-72 game. That was that monster of a football game. I think that was it.
I feel like that is the case.
Yeah. And this honestly it's not going to be that, but this should be a good game. I think LSU Texas A&M is going to be a game. Man, honestly, this is actually the two best teams in the SEC right now. This is 1 and 2 in the SEC. If you look at the SEC standings, it's Texas A&M.
I'm still not out on Tennessee.
No. I'm not saying like this is who's going to be like the representative of the SEC. I'm just saying like as we sit today, number 1 and number 2 in the SEC is Texas A&M and LSU. That's where we sit today.
Gotcha.
So,
okay. Okay. I misunderstood. I got you. I so badly want to take LSU. I don't know if I can. The spread's so close. Texas A&M 2.5 points. I think Texas A&M. Okay, I'm going to say Texas A&M to win. Obvious. I think they cover also. I think they probably win by a field goal. And I'm going to also take the over here.
Okay. I want to agree with you, but I can't do it. I can't do it. Since you're taking A&M, I got to take LSU. I got to take LSU. Something about it. They go into Allen Field, 12th man at night. Now, I could be eating my words come Saturday night, but I definitely think LSU will go in there. They will get the dub. They will continue to climb up the ranks, and they're a sneaky top 10 team right now, which is honestly making that USC loss look even more suspect. Like, how the hell did they lose to USC? But I'm taking LSU to cover LSU outright. Give me the over.
Give you the over. Josh took LSU outright, LSU to cover, and then he took the under. So, yeah, interesting. All right, Artie, game of the week. The Temple Owls come into Dowdy Ficklen Stadium in Greenville, North Carolina, and face off against the East Carolina Pirates under interim head coach, friend of the podcast, Blake Harrell. The Pirates are 6.5-point favorites, even without a head coach. The over-under is 48.5. Artie, give me your thoughts.
My expectations for the rest of the season have obviously been tampered down now. At this point, I would be happy if we get to bowl eligibility. So if we get to 6 wins, I'm happy.
You got to do it in the next 3 games if you're going to do it, because those last 2 games of the season are super tough.
North Texas and Navy, I mean, and especially if they continue to do what they've been doing, they're going to be looking to kick our ass. So because they're going to be trying to fight for a conference championship spot.
North Texas might throw for 600 yards on us.
Especially without our first-round draft pick. Yeah, absolutely. So, man, I mean, this is you're absolutely right. This is a get right game. You're right. This is a pride game. Above anything else, this is a pride game. This is okay. Yeah, we know what just happened. We just lost our coach, got fired. We know we're sitting at 3-4. We know obviously the train is kind of going off the rails here. But a game against Temple at home, this is one of those games where you got to really just strap in and say, nah, we're not going off the rails that much. Like we may be going off a little bit, but we're not about to sit here and lose to Temple at home. It's got to be one of those games. It's just got to be pride. You got to understand you got better talent, right? You've got better players. It's just got to be a pride thing. And you're at home. The environment in Dowdy probably will not be as good as it should be. If we're being honest, I'm just going off of what we've seen the last few years. It's probably not going to be as good as it should be. By the third quarter, it's going to be 25,000 people in there. That's just what I expect. But
do you think there's going to be 25,000 people there at kickoff?
Shit, I don't know if it's going to be 25,000 at kickoff. To be honest,
all right. Let me ask you, Artie. Announced attendance this weekend. Announced
attendance would be something like 39,750, but it ain't gonna look like that. Like it's
okay. That's I was gonna do an over under. You didn't let me finish. I was gonna say over under,
okay.
And I was gonna say 34.7. So you would take the over on the announced attendance.
Yeah, the announced attendance is gonna be something that like sounds pretty good, but when you actually look at the stadium, like there's no flipping way. There's over 30,000 people in this stadium.
Yeah. I'll put this out there. Tweet at us when you hear this. The over under announced attendance for Saturday 34.7. 34,700. Is the announced attendance over or under that? Do you think that's fair? A fair number, or would you put a different number on it?
No, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Okay. Let us know. Let us know what you think if the announced attendance will be higher than that. We're not saying butts in seats. What's announced?
Yeah.
That's a gambling corner, just a fun pick. But back to your pick, Artie.
Yeah. Who's the favorite here? ECU?
ECU. ECU about 6.5.
I do believe this is a sloppy game. I think you're going to see some ECU mistakes, probably quite a few, but I also think you're going to see quite a few Temple mistakes. I think we're playing one of those teams to where we can maybe not play that great of a game and still eke out a win. I'm going to take ECU to cover, not by much. This is not going to be a blowout, but I'm going to take ECU to cover. Obviously taking ECU outright. And I will take the over. I think there will be some points scored in this game. I do believe that ECU will find a way. They will galvanize the troops. I think Blake Harrell's going to probably go in there and have some sort of motivational speech going in before the game, like, hey, like your season's on the line, get it together, strap up, burn the boats, whatever it may be. But I do believe at home ECU gets it done against Temple. And it's crazy. I don't have confidence in it. I don't have no confidence in we're going to beat Temple. I shouldn't feel that way at all. But I do think ECU wins this game on Saturday.
Okay, so ECU outright. ECU against the spread.
Yeah.
And then over. Or did you say under?
I took you over. I'm taking it over.
Over?
Yeah.
All right. I think we have another lot because I'm taking ECU. I think ECU comes out, and I could be completely wrong in what I'm thinking is going to happen. I think ECU plays with a lot of passion this week. I think ECU gets the job done. And I feel like this is a game where it's, I don't know, I feel like it's a 28-21 game, something like that, maybe. But at the same time, I think ECU can score points against Temple. A lot of teams have.
Right.
So I'm thinking that ECU's gonna get it done. All right, Artie, that's it. Good episode. Good
Absolutely.
episode. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We really appreciate y'all. We'll be at the game Saturday, and we look forward to seeing you. Leave us a 5-star review if you're enjoying this. If you don't, walk the damn plank and don't leave a review at all. And then follow us on social media at Boneyard Podcast. Artie, it's been a blast. Let's get the hell out of here.
Hey, as always, Pirate Nation, we love you. You know what it is. Wash your hands, wash your butts. Deuce.
Peace.